Welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're here. It's so lovely to be in good company here in Atlanta with Coach Imani Aeishah. So we hadn't seen each other in person in like, I don't know,
2008. Yeah.
4 years. Yeah. So we made a special trip just to, have a moment with each other, drop in, connect, but also to share, Imani's wisdom with the Raising Resilience community. So we're really excited that you're here, Michelle.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see you in person again.
Yeah, absolutely.
With your California waves.
Yeah, we like locked eyes at a conference. We're like, oh, you help families? And she's like, oh, you help families. Like, well, we could help families together.
And we really did it.
Yeah.
People say a lot of stuff at conferences.
They sure do. Yeah. So Coach Imani stood out to me as somebody to bring onto staff and really work with our families to build stronger partnerships. And that's what we're here to do today. And, as we're bringing Imani on, I just want you to know a little bit about her so that you can really kind of ground yourself in what's possible for you in this session today, in this interview. There's so much coming through this amazing being. She's a marriage coach and communications expert. And what we have seen with Imani's programs is that she's been able to take families, especially partners in marriage, from just surviving to actually thriving. And building relationships, resilient relationships that really last. And she's also an author and has written an amazing book called What Your Mama Didn't Tell You About Marriage.
Many things.
Yes, many things. What Your Mama Didn't Tell You About Marriage.
Yeah.
Yes. And she's also the creator of The Marriage Fix.
Yes.
And so if you want to check out Imani's work, that's the best way. Go check out The Marriage Fix. You can find her in all the places.
Yes. All the socials and stuff.
And also she's here not just as a coach, but also as a mama.
Yes.
Yeah, mother of 2 beautiful children. And so we're really excited to tap into that wisdom as well today.
Yeah. Well, journey.
Work in progress. Yeah, I always say, if you want to find a mentor, find someone who's walked through the fire and is on the other side of it, but is not maybe still in it because you still got some skin in the game.
Yeah.
Like you're really present to it.
Yeah.
But maybe they're just a few steps further so you can go, okay, from over there, look at where I'm at. Give me some suggestions of how I can get through this fire too.
Yeah. And just being intentional about parenting, but it has its challenges, as you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so Imani, one of the things that folks are always coming to me is saying, well, like my spouse and I, after having children, like we're having a hard time figuring out, like finding our way as partners, because it's so different. Your relationship can be put under such strain when suddenly your responsibilities and your sort of day-to-day life just completely changes or can completely change once a baby or multiple children are a part of it. So what are some of the top challenges you see people face when they go from that sort of more, childless to childful?
Childful. And it does become all consuming because you have this tiny being or these beings that rely on you. It gets challenging to really look at each other beyond father, mother, duties, responsibility. And so you can easily slip away from, this is my partner, my lover, my friend, this person, to like, okay, dad, who's got the diapers? You got the diaper bag, like who's making the doctor's appointments, and kind of into that stuff. Right. And I think we have to, ground and remind ourselves that, you're people and you're lovers and friends, and how do you can continue to do that amid exhaustion. And sometimes it's just napping together at some point. I think some time. And then just also financial stuff can come up too, a big one, because now you have a child. My first child, I didn't experience this because I cloth diapered and I made all her food, and, I cloth wipes, and, I didn't really buy the things all the time. And my mother bought all the clothes. She was the first grandchild. And then I experienced it with my son now. I'm like, oh, I need a budget for you, so I think too, realizing that now, like, okay, finances are going to this person. And anytime you're dealing with finances as a couple, that can be challenging. So that money, that time, that seeing each other beyond the titles of mother and father, I think are big ones.
It can be an all-consuming role.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, and it eats up, not just like it takes, kind of eats up the space for the romantic relationship, but also like even like your work identity, your like a friend identity, your identity in your greater family, like kind of all those roles start shrinking in.
It's individual, like who are you outside of being mama or papa or whomever, and you definitely There's so babies are needy. They're very, they need a lot.
Another one I
So-
want to just put into the mix also I've noticed is just discovering that you really come from different ideas about how to raise kids, and
That one.
particularly around
Mm,
how firm and how firm to be.
yeah.
Like, so then oftentimes we'll start kind of playing with, oh, you get to be the fun one and I have to be the strict one, or like,
Right.
or why are you so hard on the kids? We just want to have fun. And so it's all these like philosophical kind of underpinnings of how they want to raise children,
Yeah.
or just I think discipline particularly is the one
That's
the
a huge
crux.
one.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so we're just floating these, and I'm just, if you're checking out this episode, notice which of these stand out to you, like the exhaustion, the identity crunch, or like shift,
Yeah.
the
Cultural
finances, the
differences.
cultural differences.
Yeah.
What's standing out for you? Have that in mind, and Imani, we're gonna walk through some really great suggestions today. So,
Yes.
so you've also obviously lived through this, and you've taken that partnership, moments where you felt like you were just surviving to a thriving partnership, and it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
But like I said, you're many steps through the fire, especially because you came into this as a marriage coach, and as having a lot of the tools in your tool belt already, just like me as a parenting coach.
Yeah.
I have all these tools I'm coming in with.
Yeah.
But not everybody has that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's on the job training type of situation. You don't know what kind of child, the energy of your child.
Yeah.
My children are very different. Definitely read an interesting meme that was like, once you feel like you got this parenting thing down with one child, you really can't test it until you have another child. And then once you have that next child, they're completely different from the first child, and nothing you learn matters, and you're starting all over again. And it can feel like that. That's the season that I'm in. But as partners, I think we just learn to pivot, because we can have expectations about what we want. Like, I want this to look like this, and I want this to happen this way, and this is how I envision it, and I did my vision board and what have you, which is fine, but it is going to throw you for a loop. Your kids are going to be like, oh, they're all for it, and then not for it the next day, and that's going to throw your timeline off, and all of these things. So just kind of rolling with it, being flexible, pivoting where you need to. There's definitely power in the pivot. It's something that we've definitely had to do, just even for us. How do we date still with these kids? How do we find time for grown-up time? You know what I mean? When they want to be in the bed with you. So what boundaries do we set with our kids? Because we want them to understand that, look, mommy and daddy are people that want to spend time together, and being okay with that, because we are each other's and part of each other's world as well. So I think pivoting, really asking ourselves, like, what else is true? Like, we're going to get through this. If I'm ticked off at you and ticked off at me, it feels real true right now. But what else is true is, okay, I know you're thoughtful. I know you care about me. There have been times when you've shown that. And even right now, when I feel like you don't care at all, I can't stand you, moments, I have to say, hey, I have the receipts, right? Like, okay, well then go then. Like, I don't want to be around you right now. Take your own space. But just having the receipts and reminding myself that, no, this is my person. We're having a moment, so that's helpful too. And it's helpful, I think, for our kids to see.
Yeah. And I think that when you have that context of, this is just right now.
Yeah.
And this is how I'm feeling at this moment. I mean, we talk a lot about emotional mastery and how to just sort of conquer our kids' emotion, but it's our own emotions.
That part. Yeah.
And so, like you said, the kids get to have this model of like, oh, this is that we're having a moment.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna put it in a little bit of a container. Like, here's our moment we're having.
Right.
But there was a before and there's an after.
Right.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
But our brains can do that. Like when our lids, like we like to say, our lids flip. When we're in that kind of heightened state where we're feel in the feels, we can often think this is how it always is, and we can start to use that kind of language with each other. Mm-hmm. So that's why I love your what else is true.
Yeah. So
there's
live by that question, girl.
Yeah. What else is true? It's like, oh, you always do this. And like, what else is true? Yeah. Well, but not when we're well rested.
Right. Or we eat,
Yeah. You always do this. What else is true? Well, unless, we had date night and we've had a chance to talk through what we really need this week. Yeah. And we show up for each other differently then.
Right.
So it can actually be a diagnostic tool.
Yeah.
As well. Of like, oh, what other kinds of things can we bring in that support us in thriving and not even getting to this point, or having more resources when we get there?
For sure. Because it can feel like it can feel like a spiraling thing for sure. If you're like, oh my gosh, we haven't been able to talk like adults in a week, and then you just want to say everything in an hour, and you don't. Where do you fit that in? You know what I mean?
So if you had to pick the like one thing that you would, if people are struggling out there in their partnership, to like kind of like if you could kind of like inject it into the relationship, like kind of like float it in, like some fairy dust or something, you know what I mean? Like just your magic wand. I hear the what else is true question.
Yeah.
Is there like what's your secret? Like what is it? Like, cause I don't know.
Thing.
Yeah, like I have my guess from all the years of us working together.
Right.
But
I almost want to hear a guess first, but yeah, no. It's for me, I would say a dedication to personal growth and taking personal responsibility. If nothing's more frustrating, I think, in a relationship, really with anyone, definitely with your partners, where they can do no wrong. Like, you've never made a mistake, you don't have any issues, it's all me. You don't get to this point where we're self-examining, we're being honest, like, look, I was stressed and I snapped off at you and I shouldn't have done that. Or I didn't even consider your feelings in this moment because I had tunnel vision about X, Y, and Z. If you can't stand in that at any point, that's going to continue to be heightened state of conflict explosion in the relationship. And doing so, I think, shows that you have a commitment to your own personal growth. Because if you're with someone who's like, no, I'm good, I'm just, this is who I am, this is how I'm going to stay, that is a challenging thing to move through if they're not in that space. And all you can do is control where you are in your own personal growth. And so that's a big one for me, because it's definitely a triggering thing. It's definitely frustrating. If you're like, so you're just going to put in your defense shield every time. It's not you ever. You haven't contributed to this in any way. So even me practicing being able to say, like, I can see where I did this, where I dropped the ball here, where I wasn't considerate here, for whatever the reason was, right? That's for me to really dissect too. But I need a partner who's gonna
reciprocate in that kind of endeavor.
Yeah.
I think we in Raising a Resilience Land, we often talk about, if you want, certain behaviors or certain attitudes from your children, but you're not modeling it for them, you're literally asking them to go first with no inspiration, or very little inspiration, like just direction. So if you'd like your child to, address you respectfully, then we need to address them respectfully, for example. Or if you'd like your child to take responsibility for their mistakes, then you also need to take responsibility for your mistakes in front of them, so they can see what that even looks like, to even be able to step into that with you. And I think with adults though, we have this, but you're grown. Yeah. So you should know and you should go first. Yeah. But then we can get stuck in the you go
Let's
first.
play chicken.
Yeah.
Who's gonna pump the brakes first? Are we just gonna crash into each other? Because that's how I see it. Like, okay, how stubborn can we be?
That's really good. Right? You're like, what are we?
A millimeter away from each other. Like, who's really going to take the first step? Somebody has to do it. Somebody has to do it. Point blank in the period. You can play chicken if you want to, but you know what I mean? And it's hard because you can like, oh, I don't want to be the person. Like, we have a lot of stuff pent up, like you're saying, as grown-ups, as adults, and a lot of history and a lot of our own baggage and things that we're trying to unlearn from our own childhood. And so we carry a lot. But yeah, we can't play chicken. At some point, we have to say, okay, I'm going to be the one to make this step. And if not for the other person, ideally you're doing it for you. That's right. And so you have to kind of stand in that.
So what I hear, like the layer even behind responsibility that I've seen you unpack, and I would love to just go just one layer deeper.
Go.
Okay. Which is that having space for grace for yourself, so that you can feel like almost like you've accepted that you've made this mistake within yourself. Like you forgive, like it's okay that I made a mistake. Yeah. Because I think it takes it out of the like the game of chicken. Because you're not losing ground by like being gracious towards yourself and saying, hey, it's okay. How human of me is a phrase I like. Yeah. Or like a kid, like how human of them to, make this mistake. Yeah. So when we do that inner, like you said, do the personal work, but like there's a sort of conversation we can have with ourselves, I think, to prep for accepting your part in what's going on.
Yeah.
So can you speak to that a little bit? And like, how do you talk to yourself because you're in that moment, and then, you say take space, but make good use of it.
Yeah.
Like use it productively. So you take some space, you're cooling down, and you're having a conversation with yourself about going first.
Yeah.
Like, what would that,
let us conversation
let us in
like?
a little bit. What would you be saying to yourself?
I think in the background, in terms of personal work that I've had to do, is what you're saying, like acceptance of myself, not just acceptance, hey, I made this mistake, but acceptance of who I am, which means that there are going to be the sharper edges, the things that I'm working on improving, and amid the smoother parts. Yeah. And so I don't think that it says something bad about me if I do make a mistake. And so that's kind of the background work.
Can you say it again?
Yes. It doesn't say anything bad about me, but who I am as a person because I've made a mistake. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and that I think is accepting who we are as humans.
Yeah.
And it's baffling how much we do not do that.
Yeah.
So in that moment where you're like, okay, I've done this thing, it's an opportunity for me to say, okay, how can I be better in this situation for myself as a human being and how I want to show up in the world?
It really takes the fight out of the conflict too, because I think there's nothing to threaten anymore.
No. Because what are you going to say? I'm already telling you that I made this mistake.
Eminem and 8 Mile, where he's like, I'm going to tear myself down and then leave you with nothing. You can't, my
drop.
Yeah. You got nothing on me because I already laid it out. It's all there.
But again, that was his acceptance of self in that moment, right? To be like,
so powerful.
Let me tell you who I am. So anything that you can say, you have no words. And it's not really in a partnership thing to be like, I don't want you to have any words, but it's what you said. It's, I want us to not have that our swords out when there's a disagreement or when there's an issue. So if I come to you and say, hey, you know what? I was so stressed. I took that out on you and you didn't even deserve that. They're like, oh, because they're ready to be like, you came in, you said this, and I didn't deserve that. I didn't do anything to you. And they're ready.
Or they want to talk about the finer points of the actual argument.
Yeah.
Like stepping back and be like, yo, let's talk about that dynamic.
Yeah.
Here's what I brought to the dynamic.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Because the minutia, people get caught up in that too, right? The minutia. We're detail oriented people. Definitely as teachers or educators or coaches, right? But also heart-centered and just being like considerate and compassionate, giving ourselves that grace. And I don't think you can have that grace fully without really being in the mindset of self-acceptance of like who you are. Yeah. Even the parts where you're like, I really need to work on that, because I can pinpoint things in my life that I've worked on. And then I've worked on them in conjunction with my husband, because he's working on his own stuff at his own pace. And I'm over here working on my own stuff at my own pace. And that allows us to come together in a more beautiful way. And yes, to show our children, we're human beings. I've apologized to my children. You've heard that, well, I've apologized to my son. I mean, he's 1.5, maybe I have, but definitely to my daughter, you already know that I have said, oh man, I didn't need to say it like that, and I apologize. So she's definitely normalized that.
And I want to be clear that apologizing for your tone or a choice you made or something like that is not losing your power,
right?
As an authority figure in your child's life. I think there's sometimes this conflation with
feels like that.
Yeah, sure. but think of the people you actually enjoy following and enjoy as a leader. They're actually sometimes they're even deferential to a fault. They'll like make fun of themselves and a little, they're vulnerable. Yeah, they'll be the first to say, oh man, we dropped the ball here and it's on me. Yeah. And you go, thank goodness you said it. So we're not all going, who's this person gonna blame? Right. Right. And you get out of that, you just like clear out, don't even go near the blame game. Just start in that, ownership. I love that, Imani. That's a core piece of it all.
I saw a powerful meme that I think kind of sits at the space that both of us are in. And it said, either your children are going to either see their parents' marriage as one they aspire to have or one they don't. Oof. Boom. Yeah. Yeah. So what are we doing here? Yeah, it's challenging, but
I know that I've seen it floating around the idea like, be the kind of adult that your child will aspire to be.
Right.
Around your kids.
Right.
Yeah. And so being a parent doesn't mean changing who you are, but it's sometimes you do step into this bigger version of yourself, like
Yeah.
like the higher version or bigger version, balanced version, in competition with how exhausting it is and how new and challenging it is. And so
Yeah.
it's deep and significant and all the time work.
Yeah, for sure.
So what's one way that you and your husband like to play and let loose?
Oh my God, he's such a kid, y'all. My goodness. That's for him. Like, so we're definitely both really goofy, really fun. Like we crack each other up. And so we play games, we'll go outside and play. We, we enjoy, I mean, what do we enjoy that's like super playful? I mean, I think in general, we're not afraid to just be our base kid like selves, even with each other as two adults.
That's great.
So I'm like, if we want to play in the park and get on the slide or swing, we're going to we're going to do that. And no one's looking at each other crazy. If we're at an event and no one's on the dance floor, like we'll be the first ones on the dance floor. Like, who cares? You know what I mean? And doing our thing. Right. Like,
Me too.
like, that's fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, why not? And just enjoying life and enjoying each other and having a good time, ultimately, wherever we go, So for sure. And I'm just learning how much of a dancer you are.
There's some wisdom here.
Maybe there's
And so I can just imagine the two of you taking that playfulness with you in daily routine. So one thing I would throw out there, when it comes to shifting from that just survival mode into actually thriving,
yeah.
I want families to please stop separating fun from daily activity.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's this idea that like we got to get through the routine, like get through it, like like a grind. Like, aren't we already grinding enough trying to get through our emails or whatever? Even that can be fun, right? So it's like, how can I feel enlivened while I'm still getting like daily stuff done? And I think there's a lot of ways we talk about this in the Raising Our Resilience world. We kind of frame it as, oh, how can we, connect before we correct and actually have like relationship building alongside discipline? How can we make it more interesting and like bring in some of that, the games and the fun and the playfulness, right? But I think but people still think of that as a separate activity. Like, I need to, almost like it's school. Okay, kids, now it's school time. Right. And I'm going to like change to be this totally different kind of person. Yeah. And the kids will sometimes reject it. Yeah. And because they're like, I would be too. What is this, But that if you just turn on some music while you're doing the dishes, just to start, or getting dressed and do some little moves, whatever it is for you. Maybe play some rhymes. I mean, I'm curious, like, so get on the slide.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. When you're saying having fun, I was like playing some music. So playing music in the house. And I think too, we're a playful bunch. My daughter is always running, even in the house. I'd like walking feet. Like two speeds, right? Yeah, I was like, you don't walk? Oh, walking's boring for her. So she's running in the house, outside the house all the time. And so there's a playful energy. So I can be doing the dishes. My husband will come up and grab me. Or if I'm just in the bedroom folding clothes, he'll come and like slam me, but like, y'all know what I mean? Like on the bed, right? So, we have that moment. Right. Like, and he does that. I'm like, no, you're coming for me. And those little things that he always does and things that I do too, like just tickling each other, those little things when you're doing things in the house. And I think, playing music and just having a random dance party if that's what you're into, and just not being afraid to play. I think you're right, we compartmentalize a lot of times, but learning happens, even if you're looking from the school, learning happens all the time. And so if you believe that, right, I think that's my belief. Let me start there, right? Yes. I believe that learning happens through life, through anything, conversation, meeting people, different experiences, right? And it doesn't have to happen at your desk doing problems, what I mean? Working that out. So the same thing with like life, like you can be doing whatever and still enjoy life. If you'd rather be outside instead of inside doing something, do it outside. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I finish this, then I can go outside. We're adults now. We can go outside when we want to. We don't have to ask anybody, So I think just asking ourselves, and this is a question I've been asking myself recently in my next season of personal growth.
I love this.
What brings me joy? I've gotten away from things without realizing it for the sake of business. Yeah. Because I was like, this is business and this is what you do. And this is this frivolous thing, realizing it's coming from that place of when I was 12 and I said I wanted to be a singer, and somebody told me that's not a real career. But I've always been a creative. I wrote poetry. I wrote a book of poetry. I used to do spoken word. I sang in the jazz ensemble. I sang in the glee club. I traveled singing. You know, I did take dance, you know, things like this, just the arts.
Right.
And I'm like, when did I stop doing this? When did I stop writing? When did I stop leaning into joy?
Some of my favorite years of parenting as a step parent was when I regularly went dancing once a week and played volleyball once a week, because I'm an athlete and I'm a dancer.
Yeah, you
and
are.
I was a better human being.
Yeah.
So that made me a better, not only teacher at work with all the young ones that were around me all the time, you know, I had 20, 36, 48 children around me. Oh my gosh, you know, depending on the year. And but then like with my stepchildren too, like I was just a happier, better version of myself.
Yeah.
And it wasn't always easy to fit it in, but I did.
Yeah.
And then but then I was still kind of compartmentalize it. And I realized like we could just, when we go to the park, I can bring a volleyball and like I can, you know, mess around with it.
Just fold it in.
Just fold it in.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always have to be this separate activity from family life.
Yeah.
So it's one thing with this piece, so please integrate it, even the smallest moments like that. A little tickle, a little funny, like, oh, you know, like mess up your folding on purpose, you know, moment. Just bringing in that playfulness, not and whatever your family system looks like, whether there's 2 adults or there's 4 or there's 1, or you know, there's ways that you can be with that.
Finding your own personal joy, you know, and in resilience too. Just we have to talk about folding it in, because you are always considering where a family is, and because you get to know all the families, you know kind of where they are. And so I think you're always thinking about that as we're giving them information, like, hey, maybe we tweak this because I know I have a family here that looks like this. And so how do we share this in a way that they're feeling heard, seen, and able to fold this into their lives? And it makes it easier if you feel like, oh my God, it's this daunting, overwhelming thing. You know,
like I don't even let my families, but you know, I highly encourage them. I said, please don't just start having family meetings. Like start with, let's plan a fun activity together and have a treat at the end. And that's the whole family meeting.
Right.
Like, just start there. Like having this rhythm of like, we Sunday afternoons are our family time or whatever, however we want to do it. But just, and then work in okay, now we're going to brainstorm some ideas. We're going to make plans, and then maybe just get to some harder stuff or some teaching things. But you can just fold it in.
Yeah.
So important.
Fold in the cheese.
So I think there's also this piece, like in the parenting journey, like we can really move away from ourselves. And I think this question of what brings me joy brings us closer to ourselves again.
For sure.
Yeah. Like I've had parents say, I don't recognize myself.
Oh my God.
Especially in like disciplining moments when you're losing your cool and you're maybe like just this, you know, the exhaustion, the frustration, and maybe you don't have a tool to grab. Instead, one of my clients would say, he's like, I stopped yelling because I didn't have anything. I started yelling because I didn't have anything to grab.
Yeah.
Now I'm not yelling, or I yell less because I have something else to grab and try. Right.
Yeah.
But those moments where we don't recognize ourselves, I like this way. This is like a find your way back to yourself kind of question.
It's where I am. I'm a year and a half postpartum.
Yeah.
And that has been the journey. Not recognizing myself physically right after, then just dropping into the role of new motherhood again, and being like, what? Because I was ready to be done. Like I'm like, okay, I guess I'm not doing, I'm done, you know, just from the overwhelm of it all. And just, but asking myself that question and really sitting with the answer of like, what brings me joy, and who am I outside of these roles, and allowing that to bring me closer to myself, which in turn brings me closer to the people that I love. It's a necessity. We're talking like it allows me to thrive, but it also feels like it's how I survive. You know what I mean? So I mean, I think I'm closer to the other side of that mountain, just in rediscovery, but it got real.
Well, so I want to ask you, I like asking a lot of my guests this question, or my people. I mean, because I want to know too. It's not just for the people, the folks listening, the audience. What would you, if you could go back to that low moment where you're like, I feel like I just want to walk away from it all, and especially from the work, because it couldn't see yourself back in that role sustainably. If you could go back in time and just sort of like whisper something to yourself in your ear, like what would you want to tell yourself? And it could be on several levels, you know, comfort yourself, advise yourself, or like what comes through you.
Yeah.
And it's also like a healing practice too, by the way, where you can kind
Mhm.
of time travel back to yourself and reassure that part of you that might still be there a little bit,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. Um, yeah, because when you're in the dark, you feel like that's all you can see,
Yeah.
is the darkness.
Right.
But your eyes adjust eventually, right? And so I think the first thing is like, this is temporary because it doesn't feel temporary in it. It will pass,
Yeah.
it will pass, or will kind of shift and change where it doesn't feel all consuming, right? Even grief, right? Which we talked about that. So
Oh yeah.
it shifts and it'll pass. And so I think that's that encouragement piece of like, girl, it's not going to be like this forever, I promise, even though it might feel like it in this moment.
I just want to take a breath with that.
Yeah.
Take a moment with that. Let that land. Yeah. I think it's something a lot of us need to hear.
Yeah.
In those moments. Thank you for that one.
Yeah.
Anything else you would say to yourself?
Yeah. I think that it's not you're more empowered than you think you are to harness your own reality. And I know that sounds a little woo-woo, but
Oh
like,
yeah, well, no, it's okay. Break it down.
but you can feel there's feelings of hopelessness, or feeling like I've allowed life to just do what it's going to do to me. Like I've decided that I'm surrendering, but not in that healthy way, in that way of like, as opposed to saying like, what are the things that I can control in these kind of micro bite-sized pieces? And if this is something that I can control, this is something that I want, what's the decision that I'm making towards it, right? So let's say if it's a financial struggle bus moment, I was like, okay, I can either wallow and be complacent and kind of just like, oh, I'm in this struggle bus moment, or I can say, what do I need to do to get out of this? What are my bills every month? How short am I? Do I need to be, doing some gig work? Do I need to get something part-time? Do I need to ask for help? Do I need to get on assistance and not be ashamed about that in this season of my life? And so for me, saying to myself, like, you can get practical in these micro ways and choosing one area that feels like it's explosive, and just like sitting down with that area and deciding like, okay, if I may take one action to what I say that I want in this area, what would that look like?
I love that. That's really similar to like the leadership work that we do in our second, third, and fourth year in the immersion. We say, what would a something person do?
Yeah.
Right? So like, what would a financially savvy person do?
Oh, I like that.
Like whatever it is that you're trying to like, kind of come with, and then you come into that space instead of like feeling at a deficit of like, I'm not a financial savvy. Like, what would that person do? And then you kind of, and like this, take one practical step, break it down,
and move.
And move.
Yeah, movement. And sometimes there's movement in the stillness, right? You can be still with your own thoughts, and then you find that you're able to create more, right? Because one of my things is coming back to being, I'm already a creator, right? That's in my being, but exercising and expressing creativity outside of my business. I was putting so much of my creativity in that mold. And so, just to be able to say like, okay, I'm not feeling overwhelmed. I can take these bite-sized pieces. And then when you start to see the change, it does start to affect the mood and kind of how you're moving. So being still so that you can be alone with your own thoughts and answer those questions, that's movement too. But then also having intentional action to micro action.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah.
And those micro actions have built to where you are now in a much better space.
I am. I know, right? I'm in a much better space, right? But this is our moment of being real and being vulnerable and being honest, because it's where I currently am, right? And so that has led to that. Me saying, okay, for the physical part, I'll say that because that was like a quick one. When I didn't recognize myself physically after having a baby, and I was like, I can't wear anything, and I'm wearing my husband's clothes. I literally was like, okay, I'm going to the thrift store because I love thrifting. I'm going to go to the thrift store and I'm going to purchase clothes that fit my body now that I feel good in. That was a huge turning point for me when I looked at myself in the mirror and clothes that actually fit my body.
Yes.
And I was like, okay. And I didn't go back to my husband's clothes after that. I was like, oh, okay. I worked through that wardrobe. And then I just started walking with my baby, right? I'm like, okay, I'm not out here about to be in the gym, right? But I'm going to walk my neighborhood. And that was like the physical movement. And so those incremental things absolutely got me to where I was, because I could still be just wallowing, you know what I mean? I just didn't want to be. And I don't think any of us really want that. But it's like, how do we get out of it? It feels too big. And that's when we make it smaller.
It reminds me what we do with our clients.
Yeah.
So when we have Imani on in our immersion program as a presenter and coach, we don't say, hey, like map out everything you need to do and go do it.
Yeah.
Like we're like, where's your struggle bus heading?
Right.
Basically, right? And like, what's one thing we can do to either slow its roll or get you off the bus and standing on the ground again?
Yeah.
And we pick one thing, to like one action, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Come back 2 weeks later, another action, 2 weeks. We just keep moving.
Yeah.
And it's like the incremental change builds up this momentum. And also what I'm hearing you say too in all of this is that your mode of being shifts.
Yeah.
You're like in this discover, like, I wonder what next action is going to bring me to the next thing. And, and then you get to experience the build.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes kind of like part of how you do.
Yeah.
Your mode of being.
That's what
powerful.
I think that's what healing feels like. You know, like in
like
the process of that
parts of yourself,
right,
and carry them forward with you,
right,
instead of them dragging.
And you do such a great job of that. You know, when we're talking to the parents, of really reminding them, it's okay, you're not behind. Like you're not just, what's the one thing? We're meeting them where they are. And I always hear you encouraging that, saying that. I think that repetition is.
Because I want them to say that to themselves.
Right.
I am very deliberate about that.
No, I know.
And I encourage parents to be really deliberate about that with their children too. Like, they say it's always never kind of language can come up when they're upset. And you can say, what else is true? Like, imagine if you at 3 years old, you got the what else is true idea, and then you were able to run with that for all of your adolescence. It's like, they're mean, and they're being mean to me because they don't like my hair. It's like the story you made up, right? Or the story you're and like, well, what else is true? Yeah, but they also love doing our nails together. So wait a minute,
which is it?
Yeah, which is it? Wait, there's it's nuance. Okay, right? Yeah. So you just kind of like relax into like possibility. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and not running with our imaginations.
Yes, so powerful.
Yeah.
So as we're wrapping up, we do have a question from the audience. We have this question submitted. We're going to kind of check it out. I'm going to read it, and then I'll go first. Okay, and then I'll kick it to Imani. So how about pitfalls or pointers for introducing children in a new relationship or blended family? So I've been on this, I've been that person. So that's why I'm starting. Yeah. So I joined a family, and there was 2 households with the 2 parents had divorced and separated, then divorced, and then 2 children that would do halftime in each house, just for the context. Okay. Yeah. And then I came in as like a new romantic interest for their father. And then, for about a year we dated, and then I moved in and we lived together for 8 years until they basically launched into adulthood. And then we did end up ending our relationship, but there was like the season of, a very significant part of their lives that I got to be a part of it. And what I would say is that pitfalls would be, being in a hurry to have a significant role in their lives. That's a pitfall. And I think you really got to check yourself on what your motivation is for that in the first place. It's like, is it coming from a sense of duty? It's like, I'm the other adult, I better help out significantly and become significant to them so that I'm there to be helpful. Is it showing support to your partner that you're doing it? Is it doing it because you need their love and acceptance to feel at home in that space? Like, why are you trying to win them over? What is going on there? And be self-examining and ask any partner you're bringing into your family. Like, I know this person who's asking is a single mom with 2 kids. Okay. And just have a lot of dialogue. Like, I really appreciated my ex and I, like the fact that we were able to have conversations about what my role was and wasn't, and also like checking in about how it was evolving. Yeah. And what I end up doing is I end up just like really practicing presence and patience. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. In a presence of care, attention, contribution. Yeah. But then patience, where I wasn't ever like pushing an agenda of accept me as your stepmother. Yeah. I was just like, I'm here and I'm waiting. And like, so my stepdaughter, she was the first one to make the move. Because she thought, she's like, who is this girl who keeps hula hooping? Why is she so obsessed with hula hoops? I don't know this girl, like, who is this woman? I don't understand. Then we got to know each other, and we're out doing some chalk work on the sidewalk, and she drew herself, her brother, her dad, and me, and put a big heart around it. And she goes, "In this home lives a happy, loving family."
Oh,
And that was my
did you
moment.
cry?
Girl, why not cry? Girl, I did.
Girl.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I was like, took a picture, you know, I was like, oh my goodness, burns to my heart, to my memory. And I still have a little pocket of that lights up when I think about it, you know, it's like,
no, that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And you allowed it to happen organically.
for my son, it took longer, but we spent a lot of time playing video games together. And I didn't push it.
Yeah.
He didn't say he loved me or anything, right?
Yeah.
But then when he did, it was like, he got to choose the moment. And he goes, "I love you, Vanessa." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he said, "But it's a different kind of love from my parents." And I was just like internally like, "Oh God, what was he gonna say?" And he goes, "Because with your parents, you have to love that person. Like you have no choice."
Yeah.
But with you, it's a choice. And so in some ways, it's even more meaningful.
Oh, wow.
He was a teenager, by the way. He was a teen. He wasn't a child. He wasn't like a 5-year-old, right? He was a teen.
Yeah.
But he was like, it was cute. He was kind of doing his whole like little contemplative look he does. He was like, you know,
Yeah.
but with you. This way, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember receiving that and being so happy I waited.
Yeah.
So that's it. Like I would say presence, patience. And I would also like really like ask the person who's coming into your household, if you're the one who's sort of like, you know, bringing in, say, please let me handle discipline until you've seen me handle a lot of different scenarios. And then we can start having you be involved. Like I would go slow with the discipline part.
Yeah.
Because they don't have like that relationship buildup
Yeah.
to the disciplining.
Yep.
So then it's got to be really careful to keep, especially that ratio. I like to talk about the positive and negative interactions. Like you got to go 10-1 with a new adult coming into the scene. And so maybe skip the one for a while. Unless it's like personally impacting them. You know, obviously kids up and hitting your face, like you gotta say something. But if they're hitting, if you know, they're up and they're hitting the sibling, you might go, "Hey, can you know, I'd love to see how you handle it so I can learn how you like to deal with these things so they can like get behind you."
Yeah.
So that's my piece from the parenting side. What would you say?
No, it's so good.
This is such a great wrap-up topic.
No, it's so good. I'm
know,
like, what are you gonna say, girl? I was ready for
landing
this question.
Things, yes.
No, it's so good. And I think we also we think about the fact that dynamic is changing for everyone. And it's interesting, your children go through a certain age where the choices of the adults directly affect them. The adult choices, like if you bring somebody else, if you date, like these are choices you're making for yourself, to divorce, to stay together or not. They directly affect the children in a certain season until they're older, and it still affects them, but like in the household, that's a lot. And so considering all of that, it makes sense. You're like, okay, let's just be patient, let things happen organically. And my piece is really just having as much conversation amongst the adults for clarity so that people are not awkward. To me, awkwardness comes from you want to say something that you're not saying. You want to express something you're not expressing. So there's tension and there's awkwardness. It can also come from you express a lot of things in a way that feels uncomfortable and now you're in a room together, right? It can go either way. But it's true. It's like,
in there.
now, like I yelled at you and called you names the other day, but now the children are here. So we're gonna act like, we're breaking bread and having tea. But outside of that, there are a lot of adults. Like there can be, the parents here, then a new person, then if there's a new person over there, it can be up to 4, other adults or more,
and even like new grandparents,
coming in. It's a lot of other people. And so I think what you're saying, I heard you say in the midst of your relationship with the kids, I had a lot of conversations with their dad around, hey, this is what, I'm thinking, this is my plan, where are we with this? As opposed to just like, I want to introduce you to the kids and here they are. Like there's more conversation that's happening between the adults.
And let me be clear that those weren't necessarily easy conversations.
No.
because there were moments where, I felt too on the outside of things, or he felt like I was trying to get in, like, like we were calibrating.
Yes. There's an adjustment for everybody.
So like that was my default, but then there were times where, I'm a teacher, so I like to get in there.
Yeah.
Because that's what I do all day. So it's just sort of like I'm in the mode, and then I get home and I'm trying to get in there again. And then I realize that, oh, really, like we got to create
Pull
that,
back.
calibrate to what's actually happening for us, what we need.
Was the mom also open to conversation?
They had their own way that they were trying to dance around all the things, and I ended up being like not in those conversations.
Okay.
It was more between them.
Yeah.
And that's just what needed to happen for like for their sort of like mental health. Of like how they were processing the divorce.
Yeah. And that's why I only ask, because again, the dynamics of the other people.
Yes.
So I have seen it where that person is open to having conversation. I have seen it where they're not.
Yeah.
And I've seen it where they've also tried to control how much the other person is in the fix. Like I had one woman who was like, she said, I'm not allowed to do her daughter's hair. Right? Like can't touch your daughter's hair. She's here and she's asking me to do her hair. What do I say to her? And that's more about what's going on with that person, but it does make the dynamic more challenging.
Right. Yeah.
But then talk with your partner.
For sure.
So it does.
So when adults get their stories together, and they at least can like have the like a little bit of a rationale that's sitting there, that's not a harmful one. Where you're like undermining other people, but it's like coming. So I would say like defaulting from a place of trying to like show compassion, understanding for what's going on with the other adult. Like that's what I would try to default to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like if I even if I don't know, it's like, well, I would imagine that it's just really meaningful time for your mom, for your mom to spend with you, to do your hair. And it's like maybe something she did with her mom, and she really wants to have that with you.
Right.
She's like, but like, you want to show me how you put in your barrette? Like you can still be there to support the child, but you're not going to step over those boundaries and whatever's going on with other people. Right. So I think having that compassion with where they are, and if you are in conversation with them, leading with that compassion of like, I just want to come, like I respect, where you are, respect the situation, having conversation with your new partner, whoever is coming into the fold, and really just being open to the hard conversations that you're most likely going to need to have as you're dealing with a blended family. It's definitely possible. I've seen people navigate through it, but it can be challenging depending on what's happening. So I think as long as you come from that place, right, what you can control. That's right. And it kind of comes back to that self-acceptance and that groundedness, because there were many ways that I could have become incredibly triggered and defensive. Yeah. Because I mean, even just like a sense of your basic sense of belonging. And I'm not saying I wasn't. Yeah. Yeah. And so, but I often came down to like, what is my need here? And is this actually the only way I can get this need met on this timeline? Yeah. So oftentimes that's where the patience and the presence of like, really what I want is to embody the love and care that I have for these kids. Yeah. And it doesn't have to look like this. Like, what else is true? Like, what's another option? It's genuine and it's honest, and you're pivoting and you're moving with what you see so that things could happen organically. And over time, certain emotions settle, too, depending on how fresh certain things are. And that patience comes in handy, even though that is a trait that's challenging for a lot of us. But yes. Yeah. I try to think of it more like too, sometimes my mind just wants the answer. And I'm like, well, what about like creative problem solving? Like what getting creative? It's something Imani's brought to our attention in the Raising Resilience world is the power of like, same result, less time, or same result, less money, or same result, less blank. Right. Right. And there was a lot of concessions I needed to make as a step parent. And this is something for those of you who have blended parents, blended families with just a lot of different adults, is that you are going to be sharing time differently. Yes. So you're not necessarily going to have like, every minute with your kid at home, like in the routine, because they have two households, you're splitting time. You don't get every vacation or every holiday with your kids. And, or maybe you do, and you're trying to bring in these new people. Like there's all these different ways that this happens. And I think if you start to run into this part of like, this isn't working because it's not fitting this picture, I would say, well, what is it about that picture that you want to experience? Like joy, for example, early, right? And you're like, okay, I want to experience meaningful, making meaningful memories. Yeah. Maybe, right? And you're like, okay, well, maybe it's not going to look like this, but could I pull it into our picture right now and say, like, what would be a meaningful memory here? And
Right.
trust me, my vision was not sit on the couch and play video games,
But you did it.
but
I
it's one of
love
my
it.
favorite memories with my stepchild.
Yeah.
Because it's something he enjoyed and that we really got to like talk while we were playing. Like
Yeah.
that was the thing that worked for us.
Yeah. And you met him where he was.
Exactly.
And something
I
that
got
he
into his
enjoyed
world.
doing. Right. You talk about that getting into your child's world. So this is you living it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's an example of it.
I think that it can be a beautiful thing, because at the end of the day, the children experience hopefully love and care from even more places and spaces.
Right.
I think that's what, I try to think of it in a bigger sense.
Yeah. And it's not about being same with each other either.
Right.
Like we're not saying, like, notice we're saying have conversations. We're not saying like be identical twins, like, right, like be
Right.
identical parents, right?
Right.
I mean, some overlap and consistency is important, but you also got to understand what you need to let go of too.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even enriching for them, because they have a more variety of hopefully trusted adults who love and care for them, who have different styles, different communication,
Right.
ways and dynamics.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all.
I love
it's all
it.
part
That's
of
a
it.
good one.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Thanks for submitting that. And that was from Alethea in Texas. So I'm really appreciative of it. So just to kind of wrap up further, raising our resilience, we do take like a bold stand, as you've heard me say, that parents deserve mentorship.
Yeah.
And that they're often overlooked. And it's like why I even started this, company, and why I even created the program is because teachers have their program, the kids obviously have all the programming. We find all the programming for them, but then I think oftentimes the parents are left out. And I think the reason why our work complements so well is that it's like they need help with the parent to child relationship, which is what I'm helping a lot with. And they also need help with, relating with the other adults and caregivers and their relationship.
Right.
So I guess, when's the right time to get coaching, right? Because what would you say to all of those folks out there about getting that support?
Yeah. When's the right time to get coaching? And you make a good point that there's programs for other people, but I think we as parents, how many of us have said or heard, like, there's no manual for this thing, right? There's no, we're just like parenting by the seat of our pants and things like that, looking for support groups and Facebook and Land and things like that. I think when you are a parent, wherever you are in that space, there's never a bad time to get support for parenting, to get guidance on how to do it in a way to have the relationships that you want with your children. I think good or, whether controversial or not, around like we envision what kind of relationship we want to have with our children, right? They're going to be their own people. That's why I say, can people like, but you got to let them be their own people. Yes. But you still kind of envision the future of having a relationship. For me, I want to be able to communicate with my daughter. I want her to feel like she can come to me. I want to create an environment in which she feels she can come to me about things, even the hard things, especially the hard things, right, when she's out there doing life, kind of on her own. I want her to see me as a human being. I want her to see what it looks like to have healthy relationships with friends and with partners, etc. And so everything that I'm doing now is helping create that, because how much of our childhood and baggage do we carry with us as adults? We were just talking about how much we measure time by our children, like 1 second they're 2 and then they're 16.
Wow. Yeah, like when we met, your child was a preschooler.
Right, and now she's about to be 8, in a few weeks. So if you think about that, it's being very present as a parent in the present, wherever you are. That's what you want for your child, the relationship you want to have now, like wherever now is for you to be able to build that, because they're learning right now from you.
Right. And then tomorrow and the next day.
Right.
And the next month, and the next year. Right. Yeah.
And the years will go by fast. And then there'll be an adult or a young adult, and you're like, why aren't they coming to me? Why don't they feel safe? Why are they lying by omission?
Right. And I do work with parents with adult children.
You do?
A handful. And my goodness, the timeline has to be so slow because we're backfilling years and years and years and years.
Exactly.
And so I'd say, how about only backfill like 3 years? Like 6.
Yes.
If you can get there. And no shame in trying it on your own as much as you can, like no fault in that at all. But when you're stuck and and your Google search isn't giving you what's working for your kid,
Yeah.
like you don't have to stay there. I think
Yeah.
that's what I learned about coaching. I didn't really, I used to think I didn't accept coaching in my life, like only like very tactical things like a volleyball coach or
Right,
something, or a
right.
dance teacher, right?
Right.
And for some reason I put that in a different category than like
This seems
doing
more intrinsic.
than like practice, like life skills, right?
Yeah.
Relationship skills. And I remember finally accepting mentorship in my life, and about 3 months into it I was like, why doesn't everyone have a coach?
Right.
At least one.
Yeah.
On the thing that is like their highest priority thing they're working on.
Absolutely.
And so thank you for speaking to that. I think that, any, like, why not now?
Yeah.
Because if it's even on your mind, then there's probably something that
I
you
was
could be
pregnant
doing.
when I started searching. We have pregnant women and results, or people have children and then they're pregnant, and like you think about the fact like, oh, you get to start fresh with this one, like with everything that you've learned, even though you have little ones in the house too,
Right.
who are growing up in it as well, so
I do hear from folks who have adult kids and they feel like it's never too late. They could be doing their own version of it. But like for my program, it's usually when kids still in the house. That's really the model.
Yeah.
And they said, I had all these women, especially in business conferences, they hear what I do and they come up to me like, I wish I had met you when my kid was still at home.
Yeah.
And I just think that's worth noting.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to be in that place.
For sure.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well, Imani, it's been so amazing to have you on the show, but also especially to have this time with you.
Yeah.
I can see why Imani is something that
great conversation. Yeah.
I've been so excited to have as a part of the staff.
Yeah. Thank you for having me for the last, is we going fourth year? Yeah. Girl.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, we'll leave you with that, our sweet goodbye. And feel free to submit questions and more information to come. You'll hear it in the outro. But Imani, thank you.
Thank you for having me. This was great. It was good to see you too.
Absolutely.
On my side, on my coast.
All right. Be well, everybody. See you next time. Thank you for all the love, attention, and questions. And may you raise happy, resilient, confident kids as you become a calm and empowered parent. Lots of love to each and every one of you. Bye for now.